Recently, I had to learn APA citation. Oof. It was a heavy lift after a few decades with MLA. It gave me a refreshed sense of how overwhelming students likely find MLA. I found myself thinking, why can't I just link my sources in parentheses? Why can't I just reference the authors who informed my thinking inside my sentences? Why on earth does it matter if I use a comma or a semicolon, put the page first or put the page second? Why does APA even exist? Yeah, all the things our students probably think when we roll out our 26-page MLA Redux, which doesn't even cover it all. And that's only the beginning of student frustration when it comes time for a research paper. Now, today I struggle a little bit in recommending these alternatives to the research paper because someone in my family, someone I'm close to, regularly references the research paper he wrote in high school as a landmark in his academic life. He loved it. He was so proud of his work. It set him on a path that eventually led all the way to a PhD program at UPenn. The other night, though, when we were debating the relative merits of 5-paragraph essays and research papers, he did mention that the rest of the class did not exactly excel on that research paper assignment back in high school, if the comments his teacher made as she passed back the papers were any sign. John Warner, in his book Why They Can't Write, posits a possible reason for that lack of excelling. Here's a quote from his book. The writing-related tasks we frequently visit upon students would prove difficult for even highly experienced writers. Writing on subjects with which we're newly familiar, in forms that are foreign, and addressed to audiences that are either undefined or unknown, other than for the teacher, bears little resemblance to the way we write for the world. End quote. In other words, we often ask students to try and make themselves an expert on something they're not that interested in for a research paper. Use a citation format that is next thing to a foreign language for them. Tie themselves in knots trying to figure out how to convey what they've learned in an orderly way that generally leaves little room for their own voice or opinions, and do it all just to show their teacher for a grade. Of course, that is how it has seemingly always been done. And after all, we survived, we might argue. I remember learning MLA format in 7th grade and creating my first research note cards. I dutifully scrawled quotation after quotation on those note cards, putting all the source information on the back. I can literally close my eyes and see myself at my little circular table with my little chair and my teacher leaning over my shoulder, helping me with my note card. I can't remember what I wrote about, though, for that 7th grade research paper. When I think back to that, literally nothing comes to mind. The first research assignment that I do remember came in 11th grade when I participated in Minnesota's National History Day, making it to the state finals with my project, The Column, Supporting Architecture Through the Ages. I remember a lot about that project. I remember my architectural timeline supported on a bridge of heavy white dominoes across the front of my display board. I remember learning about iconic Corinthian and Doric columns, and now I've seen them all over the world in my travels since. I remember virtually exploring Athens as I searched through various texts trying to figure out how the column worked, why it was so special, how it evolved over time, and what it looked like in buildings at different time periods all over ancient Greece. I remember presenting my project in my hometown of Duluth, Minnesota, sensing that I barely made it through with so many other great projects on hand, learning from the quality around me and improving it before heading for Minneapolis. I also remember going to Valley Fair, the amusement park I had had my eye on for years, right after the state competition with my dad. The whole experience was, in a word, awesome. My National History Day project let me choose any topic of interest to me that fit whatever the general theme was that year. And I'm sorry, I can't remember. It let me use my love of design, color, lettering, and layout in addition to my research skills, which were just growing. It gave me an authentic audience to consider. I think I still had to use MLA citation format, but I was so busy with everything else that I wasn't about to let cracking that code stop me. I figured it out. I had a competition to win. Not that I did, but I sure had fun trying. When I look back on my academic and professional life so far, research in service of a real purpose in an arena that truly interested me, with the ability to include modes that I enjoy working in for an audience that I truly hope to impact, made all the difference in igniting my best work. So, what if we warm our students up to research with activities, projects, and shorter writing pieces that focus more on elements like these and less on note cards? What if instead of jumping into huge MLA research papers with only one person, us, as the intended audience, we cast a little bit of a wider net around the area of research and explore ways to give students more agency over topic, mode, and audience? I've got to say, my friend, this introduction is getting out of hand. 13 paragraphs in, and we haven't even played the introductory music yet. It's lucky I'm not writing a 5-paragraph essay. So anyway, without further ado, let's talk about 5 alternatives to the research paper that help students practice key skills they can draw on later, if and when they choose a path that requires them to write lengthy academic research papers with full citations in APA or MLA. Welcome to the Spark Creativity Teacher Podcast, a podcast for English teachers looking for more creativity, more engagement, more joy, and no more scripted curriculum, lesson planning ruts, or boring book lists. I'm Betsy Potash, and I'm honored you're trusting me to help. You're not alone on this creative journey anymore. Okay, let's dive into these 5 project ideas. You may want to do one of these exactly, or they may help you think of something else that your students are interested in, where you could apply these concepts of agency over topic and mode and incorporate the possibility of authentic audience. Option number 1, the nonprofit funding fair. So I'm starting small with this first project. This is like dipping our toes into the research water. For this activity, students get to search out a nonprofit online. So it can be any nonprofit, something that sparks their interest. They can hop on and start searching top nonprofits started by students, nonprofits related to climate, nonprofits related to helping children, like anything that they're interested in, they can start searching. Once they find a nonprofit that hooks them, they can do some source analysis. So they're going to hop onto the nonprofit page and explore. They're going to read the about section, the impact section, look at the photos, look at the videos, look at the interview with the founder. Everything they can do to decide, is this a good nonprofit? They're trying to form an opinion of how effective the nonprofit is and whether they're spending money well. They're asking themselves, would I donate money here? Do I think my money would be well spent? That's the beginning. But then they're going to take it one step further and do some lateral reading or fact checking. They're going to look up the nonprofit on a nonprofit checking site like Charity Navigator. So at that point, they can compare their own analysis based on what they found on the website versus sort of the score that the nonprofit gets for how they use the money that's donated to them. And at that point, they're going to synthesize what they found and then what they discovered when they checked on what they found to write a little pitch to their classmates, pushing either, yes, you should support this charity, or no, I really don't think you should. To finish off the lesson right at the end, you can hand everybody out some game money, right? Just like print out something that says $1, $25, or whatever, and give everybody some little bills like that and have them go around and read the pitches and decide where to donate their money. As students finish the fair, invite them to reflect a little bit on what they've learned, which is a crucial part of the writing process that John Warner talks about in his book, Why They Can't Write. And I found this really interesting. So at the end of an activity like this, students might not even realize everything that they've done in terms of building research skills, but they've actually analyzed a source, then cross-checked it for accuracy, and then written an argument based on their synthesis of the two. But it's all been so integrated with a specific audience, with an arena that's interesting, in a mode that kind of speaks to this generation, exploring a website of people doing important work in the world. It's sort of easy to cloak all of this skill practice in just a fun, engaging exploration of nonprofits for the day. All right, we're going from toe in the water to like full cold plunge pool. This next project is much bigger, and this is the AI policy project. We've talked about this in the past. Maybe you heard Erica Kempf come on last year to talk about her use of this project in class, but this is a full project-based learning research unit that I have designed for you that's just a free download on my website. So I'll definitely put that link in the show notes if you don't have this project yet. But stepping back here, AI continues to dominate so much conversation in education, right? Lots of tech companies are investing heavily, thinking it's part of the future of education. Teachers everywhere and admin and education writers are thinking about how can we use it ethically? What role should it play in our research, in our writing, in our differentiated learning, in our feedback, in all aspects? And this is something that's still being defined. And so it is a fascinating time for students to research it because there isn't just one right answer. So in this unit, students are going to have a chance to research the role of AI in education, ask the questions that they want to ask, and answer them by surveying people, interviewing experts, looking at the emerging opinions and studies that are coming out all the time, and then pulling that research together for some specific audience. Who do they want to share their understanding of AI with? Are they going to try to help the preschool teachers in their community understand what it could have to offer them in building lessons? Are they going to try to help sports coaches use it effectively to craft interesting practices? Are they going to think about how it could be used as a tool in your class? Like, there are lots of different angles that they could take on it, and audiences with whom they could share their final product based on their research into AI. Okay, option number 3, the infographic. If you know me, if you hang out with me online, you know that I think presenting information visually is absolutely fascinating. You can tell a story in colors, in icons, in emojis, in the way you lay out your words, just as much as you can tell a story with your words. And the great thing about an infographic is it's a combination of all of these things, right? You can make an argument about global warming just by like how happy the penguin looks that you put next to the information in all of your little sections. If you have a very sad looking penguin and all of your colors are like dark gray and navy blue and kind of darker, bleaker looking shades of your palette, then, maybe you're conveying information in a way that's meant to influence your reader and viewer to feel a certain emotion. If you do an infographic about your favorite sport of tennis that is just super peppy and full of bright colors and has all these fun graphics and statistics about how your health is improved by tennis, you're maybe presenting a more chirpy view of your research into the sport. An infographic is something that can be designed in 8 million billion different ways, and it's something that students see all the time in the world. So if you give them the chance to research something that interests them and think about an audience that they want to reach with that information, and then design directly to that audience using all the tools at play, color, imagery, information, location of the text, size of the text, just all these different things, it can be a fascinating experience. And along the way, they can practice, hitting the main points from their sources, synthesizing multiple sources, incorporating quotations, creating a source as cited. But it all feels very doable and digestible. It's like, if a research paper is a Thanksgiving dinner, then creating an infographic is like a really great burger, right? It's more approachable, but it's still delicious. It still is hitting a bunch of the food groups. Okay, next up, the research carousel. This is similar. I actually spend some time every month creating research carousels. And I think a lot of people who are trying to communicate ideas do right now because they're still so popular on social media. If you're not familiar with the idea of a research carousel, it's basically a swipeable set of it can be images, but can also just be like shapes that swipe that have all text on it. But I think in an ideal world for students, it's going to be some combination of media. So maybe the first swipeable slide is their hook, then they get into their thesis, then they get into their supporting ideas. But it all turns into this kind of visual swipeable story. And so each little chunk of their research becomes a puzzle. How do I want to convey this research in a way that makes people keep swiping? Do I want to put a video here, an audio clip? Do I want to have big giant text for this important point and then a slide with like all this tiny text that gives lots of information and quotations? Do I want to put a map here? It's a chance for them to play across modalities as they think about their audience and what would make them interested in learning more about a topic that theoretically the student really wants them to learn more about if they've chosen something that truly interests them. So research carousels can be just really fun to design. I find them to be lots of fun to design. And it just hits on all those same skills. You need to find out everything you can. You need to boil that information down to what's most important. You need to figure out how to make it clear that you know what you're talking about and that you've done quality research so that people trust you. You need to think about how these multiple modes can help tell your story. It's all these great research skills with like the gloss of, hey, this is a fun social media project, and social media is a popular form of communication with your generation. So like, let's talk about how you can use it. Okay, I know you didn't think we were going to get through this without me bringing up the possibility of a podcast. So option number 5 is the research podcast. Again, students have the chance to play across multiple genres, multiple modalities. They get to design the podcast cover. They get to use their writing skills to do the script or the outline. They get to use their speaking skills and their audio interests to mix music and sound effects with their voice. A research podcast can take many forms. One of my favorites is the idea of doing a 90 seconds till you know podcast. So this is really short because it can be hard to grade a super long podcast, and it can also be harder to give a super long podcast an authentic audience. But when you have students do like an action-packed 90-second research podcast, they need to find out what they need to find out, and then they need to boil it down to what really matters. They need to get to the heart of the topic and convey that to their classmates. And that's what I would recommend, is that you have them consider their classmates as an audience for this project. So when you hit this type of research project, you can either give students free rein to teach their classmates something interesting, sort of like their own tiny TED Talk, or you can incorporate it in your unit. So maybe you're about to kick off a unit on Shakespeare. And you could ask them to choose topics related to Shakespeare. And it could be a range of things. It doesn't just have to be historical context. It could be like, how does Shakespeare influence Broadway today? Or it could be what poets, contemporary poets, talk about Shakespeare as one of their influences. Or it could be, what are some fascinating remixes of Shakespeare that show up today? I'm trying to think of ideas off the cuff here that are not already explored on the amazing podcast Shakespeare Unlimited, which is a wonderful, much more long form research podcast about Shakespeare. And I realized that all the first ideas that came to my mind were things that Shakespeare Unlimited has covered, because they talk about so many interesting contemporary things. So anyway, maybe it's not Shakespeare. Maybe your students are going to research performance poetry today, and you're going to give them all 90 seconds to talk about a performance poet of their choice or whatever. Maybe it's going to be about the college essay, and they're all going to research different colleges and just spend 90 seconds talking about a school that they discovered and what they thought was really fascinating about it and you're just going to listen to those along the way during your college essay unit to help students feel inspired and to get them thinking outside the box of maybe the couple of colleges that they're already thinking about, because maybe their classmate is really excited about a college that's in Scotland or a college that teaches graphic design in Tucson or whatever, and they had never thought about that college. And it's just fun to hear these tiny blips of research from their classmates, and it truly makes an impact, which is again that audience component that can make such a difference when you're writing, when you're speaking, when you're creating, knowing that it's going to land somewhere and maybe influence someone, that can make such a difference. Okay, let's wrap it up here. Projects like these will give students practice in the exact same skills they need for a research paper, building up their ability to understand main ideas from sources, synthesize information across sources, use citation format enough that it stops feeling like alien code, hopefully, embed their argument and voice into their work, experiment with different effective modes for sharing their work, and keep a real audience in mind. Of course, if you want to culminate this type of practice in a full research paper, you can. I'm definitely not here to say don't do it, but I am here to say there are a lot of engaging ways to build up to it so it doesn't feel like such a heavy lift. And, maybe if you're teaching younger students, you don't need to do it yet. Looking back, for me, I definitely think that 7th grade was a little young to be writing a big MLA-focused research paper. And to bring it back to John Warner, in his book, he suggests that even in his freshman composition class at the college level, most of his students benefit more from building their skills with agency and audience rather than focusing on extensive research papers. One more quote to wrap us up from John Warner. Academic writing is a genre like any other. We should not pretend it is the only context in which one can learn to communicate effectively. We can determine what kinds of thinking and reasoning academic study requires and have students practice those ways of thinking with significantly greater depth and in many different ways. All right, my friend, that is a wrap on our 5 inviting alternatives to the research paper. I hope you found one, at least, that's appealing and you're excited to explore how it could work for your students. Until next time, take care of yourself and stay creative.